Welcome to Mom Parent ADHD, the podcast where we say the quiet parts out loud. Here we talk about the moments other people don't see, the meltdowns, the guilt, the fear, and the fierce love that keeps us standing. If you're a mom carrying the unseen weight of raising a child with ADHD, you're in the right place. This is your space, a place to breathe, a place to feel understood, and a place to learn how to navigate the storm without losing yourself in it. I'm Lola, a mom raising a son with ADHD, and I'm really glad you're here because parenting a child with ADHD isn't about perfection. It's about showing up with love, even on the days that break you open. Before we begin, a quick note. I'm not a doctor, and nothing in this podcast is medical or legal advice. I'm simply sharing my personal experience as a mom parenting a child with ADHD. Always speak with a qualified professional about your child's specific needs. All right, let's get into today's episode. I want to talk today about what happens when your child is diagnosed with ADHD. Because even when you have suspected it for a while, even when you were the one pushing for answers, hearing those letters out loud can still land hard. I remember that feeling. It was not just one emotion, it was many. There was relief because something finally had a name. There was validation because some of what I had been noticing now made more sense. But there was also fear. Fear of what the diagnosis would mean. Fear of how other people might see my child. Fear that somehow those 4 letters would become the loudest thing about him. Fear that the world would start defining him by what he struggled with, instead of seeing him as the full, brilliant, complicated child he is. And maybe you know that feeling too. Maybe you have sat in the car after an appointment and just stared ahead for a minute. Maybe part of you felt grateful to finally have an explanation, while another part of you quietly grieved. Maybe you wondered if accepting the diagnosis meant giving your child a limitation they would carry forever. If that is where you are, I want to say this gently. Take a breath. Because what if ADHD is not a label that closes doors? What if it is actually a map? What if it is the thing that helps you finally understand the terrain your child has been trying to navigate all along? That shift matters because before diagnosis, so many of us are parenting in confusion. We are trying routines, consequences, reminders, sticker charts, encouragement, structure, prayers, and sometimes a little desperation too. We are wondering why something that seems to work for other children does not seem to work for ours. We are asking ourselves things like, why is homework such a battle? Why do simple directions turn into repeated reminders? Why do transitions feel so hard? Why does my child seem to care deeply and still struggle to follow through? Why does everyday life feel harder than it looks for other families? And when you do not yet have the map, it is easy to misread the struggle. It can look like laziness when it is really executive dysfunction. It can look like defiance when it is really overwhelm. It can look like carelessness when it is really difficulty with focus, memory, or task initiation. So one of the greatest gifts of diagnosis is not that it fixes everything overnight. It is that it gives context. It helps you stop parenting in the dark. It helps you say, okay, now I understand more clearly what kind of support my child actually needs. That is why I want moms to hear this clearly. The diagnosis did not create the struggle. It named it. And once something is named clearly, it can be supported more wisely. That is why I do not want you to see ADHD as shameful information. I want you to see it as useful information, not a scarlet letter, not a verdict, not a ceiling, a map. Now, one of the hardest parts for many moms is figuring out how to talk to their child about ADHD without making them feel like something is wrong with them. That matters deeply because the language we use can either protect their dignity or quietly damage it. What helps is simple, compassionate language. You might say something like, your brain is not broken. It just works a little differently. Some things may feel easier for you than they do for other people, and some things may feel harder. That does not mean something is wrong with you. It just means we are learning how your brain works best. I love that kind of language because it removes shame. It tells the child, you are not the problem. We are learning the pattern. We are finding what helps. And that is such a different message from why can't you just do this like everyone else? Another important shift is understanding that ADHD is an explanation, not an excuse, and that distinction matters. An explanation says, this is why this is harder for me. An excuse says, so I do not have to work on it. That is not the goal. The goal is for our children to understand this. Yes, some things may be harder for you. Yes, you may need different tools, different support, and a different approach. But no, that does not mean you are incapable. It means you climb differently. So if homework is a fight every afternoon, we ask what support is missing. If transitions lead to meltdowns, we ask what preparation is missing. If chores keep getting forgotten, we ask whether the system is actually built for the way this child's brain works. That is what the map does. It helps us stop personalizing every struggle and start interpreting it more accurately. And honestly, one of the most powerful parts of this whole journey is learning how to protect your child's self-identity. Because when a child hears over and over again that they are lazy, difficult, careless, forgetful, dramatic, or too much, they can start to believe that the problem is who they are. That is where shame settles in. So sometimes one of the most powerful things we can do is change our language in everyday moments. Instead of saying, you are so forgetful, we can say, it looks like your brain needs a stronger reminder system. Instead of saying, why are you always doing this? We can say, this seems to be a hard moment. Let's figure out what would help. Instead of saying, you never listen, we can say, I think your brain got distracted before the directions finished. Let's reset. That shift does not remove accountability, it removes humiliation, and a child who feels understood is much more likely to stay open to support. Now, one practical thing I really love is the idea of helping your child build a simple user manual for how they work best. Not something formal, not something clinical, just something honest and useful. You can sit down together and ask a few simple questions. What is your brain really good at? What feels hard for your brain? What helps you focus? What makes things harder? What helps when you feel overwhelmed? What do you wish adults understood about you? And what you are doing in that moment is so valuable. You are teaching self-awareness without shame. You are helping your child understand, I am not random. I am not impossible. There are patterns here. There are things that help. There are tools I can learn to use. That kind of understanding can become a foundation for confidence. And I also want to say something to the mom who is still quietly struggling to accept the diagnosis. Accepting it does not mean you are giving up on your child. It means you are giving up on confusion. It means you are choosing understanding over denial, strategy over shame, support over guesswork. That is not weakness, that is wisdom. And yes, there can still be grief in that process. Grief that the road ahead may look different than what you imagined. Grief that your child may be misunderstood by people who do not take the time to really see them. Grief that you are now learning a language you never expected to need. That grief is real, but so is the clarity that can come after it. And clarity is a gift. So if this is new for you, or even if it is not new, but it still feels tender, I hope this episode reminds you of something important. Your child is still your child, still whole, still worthy, still full of possibility, still deserving of being deeply understood. The diagnosis does not reduce them. It helps you love them more accurately. It helps you stop wandering and start building. Not from fear, from clarity. Not from shame, from understanding. Not from labels, from a map. Thank you for being here with me today. And before you go, I want to invite you to reflect on this. What is one moment from this past week when understanding your child changed the way you saw them? Hold on to that. You might even want to write it down. And wherever this week finds you, I hope you carry that moment with you. This is Lola, and you've been listening to the Mom Parent ADHD podcast. If something in this episode spoke to your heart, if it helped you feel seen, I want you to know there's more waiting for you. You can listen to new episodes every week, and you can join me on YouTube and Substack at Mom Parent ADHD for deeper support, stories, and encouragement. You'll find all the links in the show notes. But before you go, hear this. You are not walking this road alone. You are showing up even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. And your child with ADHD doesn't need a perfect parent. They need the mom who stays. Until next time, give yourself grace, breathe deep, and keep showing up in the storm. You're doing better than you think.